I realized that because I was with the bank and the brokerage firm, I just learned that I wasn't specialized in the people that I needed to work with that I really liked. I really liked the people of our community, the blue collar worker, the guy that's a contractor. I mean, I grew up with him in the lumber business, the plant operators, the engineers, and to help them educate them on what they really have and put them on the right track to the holistic plan instead of being in a reactive plan. Because it's truly, the investments are very important. When you take a holistic approach, I can tell you right now, your retirement you will have much more money to enjoy, to do the things you want to do. But those are buying opportunities if you're in the accumulation phase. It's not so good when you're heading towards retirement. And that's the second phase. The second phase is what nobody does, I see. But that's 3 to 5 years before you retire. You're laying the foundation of what retirement looks like. That's the big deal. A lot of people don't realize you don't want to retire not be able to do what you want to do, right? But if you retire and have to worry about the volatility of the stock market, or not really know what you have in the rules of like the accounts and how you're gonna draw, it's pretty nerve-wracking to have this large amount of money. You see the fluctuation in retirement, right?
Yes.
A lot of people don't retire. But when you have a financial advisor trying to tell you and sell you investments, but doesn't really go into the details, what does retirement look like for you? You want to go to Alaska? You want to go on a cruise? Oh, you want to buy that Porsche? It's very nice looking outside. But what I'm saying is those are the things you want to look at.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Haitian Kings Podcast. Today we got somebody special. At this time we have right now, the market is down, tariff, all kind of situation, people scared. So we wanted to bring somebody, and this is in the wealth management, that can explain what's going on and then how you can make money in a situation like this. So without further ado, Troy Stine.
How are you doing?
Good, man. Welcome to the show. It's a pleasure
Thanks
to
for
actually
inviting me. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to be here.
It really is a pleasure for me to get a chance to talk to you. Like even off camera, we was basically dropping games after it's kind of like you had the game in the back of your hand. So let's just get it way back from the very beginning. Who is Troy Stine?
So basically, I grew up in Sulphur, Louisiana. I graduated from Sulphur High. I grew up in our family business, Stine Lumber, and my 7 greatest mentors were my grandfather, my father, my 5 uncles. And I really saw them have success and failures along the way and make business decisions with a company that was not only that, work as a family, which is not easy to do. 6 brothers working a company, and they've done a very good job. And I've learned about taxation, a lot about business. And then I went into school at McNeese, and I got a degree in government, political science and economics, but it actually should have been psychology. And then but from there I was working for the company. I was the oldest grandson, and after about a year or two, I was working in Crowley. We were opening up a store, and I just found it wasn't for me. And I had a friend of mine that was Edward Jones. He was recruiting me, and he recruited me to work for Edward Jones. And at the time, I don't know how many offices were in Lake Charles. I was actually living in Sulphur, just got married. And so it was a big deal to leave the family company, to break away. But I wanted, my degree was economics. I really enjoyed investing and helping people with their finance. I wanted to help. I was there for 4 years. I really wasn't a good fit for big business. I did some good things, made some mistakes, I didn't really like it. I had the opportunity to go start with First Federal. I worked for that's a bank here locally in town. I started their investment department, and we grew it really well for 6-7 years. And I learned a lot about banking, loans, because I used to also have other businesses on the side. We built, my wife at the time, we built spec homes, real estate, things like that. I did a lot of different things and helped others. My big passion was helping others to become successful in their own business and stuff. But there was a lot of failures and learning along the way. But about 2007, I realized I wasn't really helping people. I was more of a salesperson. Even though I had the title as a financial advisor, I was just much like a high-paid teller, or salesperson. And I realized that because people were either happy when the investments were high or when they were down, They were unhappy. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but really, you don't really have a lot of control over the stock market. So one day, I was discerning to where I was going to do, if I was going to go try to work back with the family business, because they were growing at the time. They really grew a lot after I graduated high school. And so I was really discerning what I was doing. And one day I was at Books a Million on Ryan Street, and I saw this book. It was called The Retirement Savings Time Bomb and How to Defuse It. It was by a guy named by Ed Slott. Ed Slott, he is a CPA out of New York, an older gentleman, but I read the book from front to back, and I realized, wow, this guy was talking about how retirees and the middle class that have saved, that I primarily work with, they pay more taxes and pay more fees than the rich. He talked about how the rich get richer because even though you see the face of like Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, things like that, they're the face, but they have a team behind them. We talked about this before the show. They have a tax attorney, a state attorney, a financial advisor, a CPA. I mean, they have a whole team that are communicating. What I realized after I read this book, that going back especially to my training as Edward Jones, is like, first of all, just the tax advice alone. Every investment, good or bad, has a tax consequence. But in that book, people don't realize that a lot of people, especially the middle class, they're funding 401ks and IRAs, not to say they're bad, but they were taught to defer their taxation. But do you realize that, and then we were also told that we're going to be a lower tax bracket. Well, let me tell you, we have a $38 trillion deficit. And that's our biggest risk of our economy and our nation. It's $100,000 per person born in America, per citizen. How are they going to pay for that? Cut spending or raising taxes. But the accounts that you're putting money into, deferring, like 401ks and IRAs, they're one of the highest tax accounts in the tax code. That's not your investment. They were created by the Congress in 1970 because Big Oil got into with the congressman at the time and wanted to do away with monthly pensions. So they started their risk rules. Now, don't get me wrong, I love 401k and IRAs. More people since 1987 have become more millionaires in wealth, especially the baby boomers, due to these accounts. Before 1987, people didn't really own stuff, but because of technology and innovation and more population putting into 401ks, they've created massive wealth. But guess what? You don't own all that. Well, for example, if you have 100,000 to $1 million, 30% of that the government gets a part of. They also have a law in there that when you reach a certain age at 73, it's called the required minimum distribution, the RMD. They tell you to take a percentage out of your money, and they tax you. And there's 4 taxes you pay on these 401k and IRAs, and not Roth. Those are some of the things we use in our practice to help our clients to pay less taxes. There's some great rules. But see, the rich, the reason why they have these teams is because their team understands the rules. And they look, because you could predict the taxation. The market's kind. It's gone up since last week and it's come back.
Yes. But
when you pay taxes, excess money to the IRS and not know the rules, they don't give you another check back. They don't give you a refund. You just accept it.
Yeah.
So that's why I said when you look at your planning for retirement or whatever your goal is, you got to look at it from a holistic approach. And if you're working with somebody, you can do it yourself. Educate yourself. That's the thing. Like, I read this book. I wasn't trained this stuff. It was a book at Books a Million called The Retirement Savings Time Bomb. Well, what I did is I called the 1-800 number on the back, and I found he had a class in Dallas, and it was amazing. He had state attorneys. I had financial advisors, insurance, some of the best, and the information was a lot. But it was like, that was the birth of Stine Tax and Wealth Management. And I opened in 2008, and if anybody knows what happened in 2008, it's not the best time to open the market. It was probably the worst. It's the worst market since the Great Depression. But I wanted to do it the right way. I thought I need to learn, so I opened a tax bracket. But about 3 years, so I started with this group, and I joined Ed Slott Elite Group, some of the best advisors at the time, and still. And I'm still part of that group with other mastermind groups. But I realized that because I was with the bank and the brokerage firm, I've just learned that I wasn't specializing in the people that needed to work with that I really liked. I really liked the people of our community, the blue collar worker, the guy that's a contractor. I mean, I grew up with him in the lumber business, the plant operators, the engineers, and to help them educate them on what they really have and put them on the right track with a holistic plan instead of being in a reactive plan. Because it's truly, the investments are very important. When you take a holistic approach, I can tell you right now, your retirement you will have much more money to enjoy, to do the things you want to do. When I was doing it, what I call as a sales investment broker, now I'm recovered, I didn't help the people like I did because I didn't know the proper information. Information is powerful. And that's why your podcast is so great. People tune into it because you're providing information with different specialists. Yeah. And that's what's great about this technology in this world, these platforms we have. But even with this, like we teach classes at Backniece, I teach classes at Swella, even we have an office at U of L. But like I said, I love educating because if I don't know the proper information, do you think the individual retiree is? No. People need to learn and read the proper information or educate themselves. Don't just rely on your advisor. You need to ask the proper questions. Make sure they're fiduciary. A fiduciary is who we are. Fiduciary is somebody that puts themselves in your shoes to make sure that they give you the right advice. They're held at a higher standard, like doctors, lawyers. But most of our industry are salesmen. And I'm just going to put it like it is. I'm not talking about it. I went through that, I grew up through that process. I'm not saying it's the right process. But I find a lot of individuals that come to us, they did better on their own by educating themselves.
So you emphasize an holistic approach to wealth. Can you break down what that really looks like for someone just getting started?
Great question, Padim. So basically, like I said, the rich get richer. Why? Because they have a team that communicates. It's a holistic approach. They look at the taxation. They look how the investment's going to affect their overall goals. But they have a target. It'd either be retirement, college education, or something. So you have to fit that into your plan. And a plan is really the key. A lot of people, they plan for their summer vacation more than they do the retirement. And so you look at it holistically, if 99% of most advisors dealing with the middle class cannot give tax advice. That's why I have a tax practice within our firm, because we emphasize tax planning and investments together. And then also with the middle class, we look at how to draw your Social Security at the proper time, how the taxation is going to educate you on that, what's healthcare going to look like, because that's a big concern now. But the holistic approach, because right now a lot of people, there's this thing called the concept called the money cycle. The money cycle is broken down in three phases. The first phase is accumulation phase, and that's where y'all, I don't know how young you are, but basically, you went to college, y'all came to this country looking for a great opportunity, and y'all used your education, then you went and got your P-Tech degree and became an operator. And y'all got very blessed the fact that y'all do have a 401k and every 2 weeks, they're matching your 401k. And over time, 20, 30 years, you could easily get $500,000 to $1 million.
Yes.
But and then Social Security. But then you look at this, and what are you worried about? That's the accumulate. What are you worried about through that 10, 20, 30 years? You're worried about one thing. Oh, the rate of return, the stock market. And I'm just saying, when people are 40 and they're like, oh my God, I lost all this money. That's why I say women are much better investors than men, because they know it's on sale. Right now, the stock market's on sale. You should be putting more money in. You shouldn't panic. But a lot of times people panic because they don't understand why they're doing what they're doing, what the phases they are.
So how do you address that? How do you address that? Because right now with the stock market, I guess with the tariff kind of went down, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to open their 401k or Roth IRA and be like, oh my God, my money's going down. They don't understand that the stock market eventually going to go back up. As you're saying, it's on sale.
Well, so like I tell people, history never repeats itself, but sometimes it rhymes. And if you understand the history of the market, especially in this what I call new economy since 1990, we've had these long bull markets. A lot of it's due because the baby boomers are putting more money in. It used to, before 1987, only 20% of Americans, the upper echelon, were in the stock market. Now we have 80, 90%. We got 3 financial channels. We got Bitcoin. We got all this. It's about speculation about what happens with the global market or what the president will rate. That's what drives the market, what he said. And it's true. but it's still the best way to make money. You just have to have a long-term approach. And so if you have patience, which if you're in a 401k, that's all you have is time. You start at and most people put more money when they're 40s, starting to get their kids out of college. That's the accumulation phase. But when I say that is like, if you know that you're going to retire at 55 or 60, you have a target. Well, that helps you understand the time frame of where you're at. And if you also understand that the market, historically, we've had these long bull markets. 2008 was the worst. In 2008, the market, the S&P 500, which everybody compares to the index, which are great investments, the S&P 500 and the bond market, it all went down 40%. Do you know when you have a 40% drawdown, a down market, you have to do 80% to get back to even? In 3 years, though, after 2011 and 2012, and I'm giving you rough numbers, but that was the spike of the fastest and the longest market we've ever had. And yes, we are due for a correction. I'm not saying we're in that right now, but we've gained, individual investors have done so well. We forget that, we have to have a correction. It's like your body. Eventually if you eat raw, bad foods and smoke and drink, your body's going to tell you something. The same way in the market. It's got to correct itself. That's why we had the financial crisis of 2008 and the tech crisis in 1999. But those are buying opportunities if you're in the accumulation phase. It's not so good when you're heading towards retirement. Yeah. And that's the second phase. The second phase is which nobody does, I see. But that's 3 to 5 years before you retire. You're laying the foundation of what retirement looks like. That's the big deal. A lot of people don't realize you don't want to retire not be able to do what you want to do, right? But if you retire and have to worry about the volatility of the stock market or not really know what you have in the rules of like the accounts and how you're going to draw, it's pretty nerve-wracking to have this large amount of money. You see the fluctuation in retirement, right?
Yes.
A lot of people don't retire. But when you have a financial advisor trying to tell you and sell you investments, but doesn't really go into the details, what does retirement look like for you? You want to go to Alaska? You want to go on a cruise? Oh, you want to buy that Porsche? That's very nice looking outside. But what I'm saying is those are the things you want to look at. I'm not saying within your means, but we spend what we make. Let's just take it. And I know this is a bad word. A budget's not bad during retirement. And it's the net of how much you need to live to build that dream. I'll never tell you what you want to hear, but I'll tell you what you need to hear. But when a person has to sell you an investment, sometimes they might have to tell you what you want to hear to get.
Yeah.
So a fiduciary responsibility to tell you, that's the approach you said, but a holistic approach. So we mainly we're specialized. I work with middle class. I do a lot of plant operators, which I know you are, engineers, because just love, and blue collar people, because it's within our community. And I mean, I just really, I learn a lot from them more than they learn from me. And that's what I love about my job. But also when we specialize people that are 45 and older, and they're in that preservation, they're coming out of the accumulation preservation, they're heading to the most important phase, distribution. How am I going to draw this money, this large amount of money out? Well, now I just told you that large $500 million your 401k is not all your money. You're partners with Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam owns 30% of that. So wouldn't you want to know how to get it out even at a younger age and to position yourself more from a tax advantage? I'm telling you, that's what the rich look at. How's this going to affect from a tax perspective before they make the investment on their plan? Because tax-free, like the Roth, there's a lot of great laws and rules. That's why I prescribe to Ed Slott and all. Like now, I met a guy within that Ed Slott group named Jason Smith. He wrote a book called The Bucket Plan, changed my whole practice. And at the time, he started a group called Clarity to Prosperity. I was number 33 office. Now we have 400 offices that do what we do, that specialize in the preservation phase and distribution phase. We do a holistic approach, and we use a bucket plan approach. And that bucket plan book is great. You can get it on Amazon, and you can do this yourself. But let me tell you, it has changed. So now our clients, instead of worrying about the volatility, we have clients call and say, how can we put more money in to take advantage of it? When you have a plan like that it can address all aspects, you can live a life like you never was.
I'm glad you said about the bucket plan. So how does your team use the bucket plan to help clients find financial freedom now and in the future?
So yes, we use it from a young age. My son Lane, who's in my practice, who graduated from McNeese, we use it from his age, for business owners to all through phases. accumulation, preservation, and most importantly, distribution. Okay. So we have a now bucket. The now bucket's your cash savings. A lot of times, especially when I was at the bank, we were taught that, oh, you're only making this amount of money on your money, so you should invest it. But cash is key. So for example, especially like Hurricane Laura, which was terrible for this community, horrible in 2020. And if you had one of these nice insurance companies that didn't really pay you out or didn't even put a roof on your house, let's say you're retired, Vadim, and you're sitting there. This is a true story. I had a client that came to me. They're a 22-year-old adjuster, not knocking you, but they didn't really have the experience for this kind of catastrophe. I mean, it's like a war zone. And so they come out, they wouldn't give them the money for a roof. Well, my client was worried because his neighbor had to go to his investment guy to get he didn't have enough savings, and so when you have a catastrophe like that, especially with economics, a $15,000 roof before the hurricane is now $25,000.
Absolutely.
Due to the sort of supply and demand. And it's not us because of the lumber yard. We're not trying to raise prices. We try to keep them down, but it's supply and demand. And so when you have that, do you know when that $25,000 roof costs when you're retired? $38,000, $40,000? You got to take it out of your 401k IRA because you pay taxes. You pay federal tax, you pay state tax, you could pay Social Security tax, and even might have to pay Medicare premium. All that goes up. And he's like, this guy just needed $30,000 to put his roof on because of the insurance. I got the same problem, Troy. What do I do? I said, you have this now bucket. We built this for this kind of occasion. You have enough cash. And at the time, they were only making 2%, but he felt good about that. Because like I said, if you got to go pay 20 or 25% taxation, that 1% ain't looking so bad.
Yeah, absolutely.
Number 2, the soon bucket. This is the bucket that nobody has. That's your secure bucket. You take a portion of your money that you need secure. You're still growing it. It's just more conservative. But when you enter retirement, that also could be your income for 5 to 10 years. The later bucket's for your growth. Because what most people do, and this is I did when I was an investment sales financial advisor, people are taking out their later bucket. We call it the 4% rule. They were taking money every month. They sell your mutual funds because you're living off the growth. Let's just talk about it.
Yeah.
They sell your mutual funds so what happens is people retire, they roll their money to an IRA. Most of the time, they're still in the accumulation phase and then they go to invest, and they're still invested as the accumulation phase. But what they're doing is, and the market is going up. And so like I have people come to me and they say, oh, my advisor's doing great, or I'm doing great with my 401k. I'm getting 18%. Well, I said, how much money are you drawing out a year? A month, $4,000 a month. I said, how are you getting that money? They have no clue. They're selling off their investments. What happens every day to the market?
Going
up and down.
You're right. So how do they know, even in good years, if they're selling out for that income, $4,000 a month for what they need? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But when we have bad markets, like 2008, and you're retired, that's the year you don't want to draw off that later bucket. That's when you make poor, bad decisions because you don't have a true plan, holistic plan. You just have an investment plan. Those are the years you're going to cancel those trips, even go back to work when you don't need to. But when you have that soon bucket, it buys a time horizon for your later money. Actually, you'd be surprised. You have way more money in that later bucket. But my clients, they have income right now during the retirement years to weather these times. And even in the preservation phase, I got guys entering retirement that we built, they understand where they're headed. They have a target. And that's what the plan is about. More importantly, a holistic plan. Just like you guys, y'all are young. Even though I don't work with you, but you can call me, guys. I'm telling you. Like I said, it's simple. What I tell you, simple things to do. You have a raw 401k, great opportunity. Don't put it all in there. And I'm not giving advice. I'm just example. But like I told you, start off there because that money, a Roth IRA is great. It's tax-free money you're putting in there. It's not money you're deferring. It's money that's already been taxed. But a dollar that grows tax-free is much more powerful than a dollar that you're going to pay taxes later on.
Yes.
And like I said, our deficit is $38 trillion. I think the biggest crisis in our country is our deficit. And let me just say this, not being political, but even under the Biden administration, under a Congress hearing, the Deputy Secretary of the Secretary of Defense said, he asked, what's the biggest concern for America today? He said, it's not China, it's not Russia, it's not cyber attack, it's our deficit. Same thing with what's going on now. Our debt is our biggest crisis. The only way the government's going to pay that down is to raise taxes and to cut expenses.
But let me ask you this though. I got this because like when it comes to saving money, it's based on the mindset, and like it's hard for people to have because all your life is like save your money, or put more money in the bank, but how you shift somebody's mind from like saving money, from saving money to like build generational wealth.
Education. Most people you'll find self-made millionaires, they've educated themselves, or they listen to stuff, and that's what's great about technology today, using it properly, like your podcast and other podcasts. There's a lot of great. Now, let me just say that you've got to be careful because there's also, I always like my dad when I'm a little older. We had these encyclopedias. It might have been 4 years old, but it was correct information. So you got to be careful going on Google and searching. But we got ChatGPT, we got podcasts like yourselves, but education, even reading books, like a lot of people. That's why I love to educate our clients. We educate you. Like we have a 3 to 4 meeting process. It's not about, because the mindset of a person that is rich and stuff is different from the middle class and different from others. So you have to educate yourself and start thinking differently.
But let me ask you this, though. I'm sure, as you said, you work with a lot of blue-collar people, operators, contractors, and so on and so forth. And I'm sure whenever, let's just say, you get a business owner that approaches you, I'm sure you got a different approach with them also, right?
You do, and because especially with me growing up in a family business, so I understand their mindset probably a little more than because I was raised with it. So their biggest investment is the business. So you know what I'm good about, because like I tell people, I build my business to always sell. Why? Because if you sell that, you're profitable. Even though I love my boys and people that I have work over, take over, because I think the reason why I love what I do is because I'm educating, helping in our people that we serve, and we're making a difference in their lives to help them live a life they otherwise wouldn't have. That's our mission. And we want to change the industry as a whole. It's our mastermind group that Jason Smith created. But what I'll say is that a business owner is a little different, and that's even part of that. But if they understand, they also have to diversify beyond their business, like starting a 401k, putting money aside in other places and diversifying. Diversification, everybody thinks stocks and bonds, but it's really about diversifying from a tax perspective. But if you understand the tax code and take a holistic approach from an investment perspective, saving is making, and it's actually more powerful. You know what I'm saying?
So what are some of the misconceptions people have about financials and wealth management?
It's I mean, really honestly, it's all about marketing and stuff. So what's the difference between a rich man and a wealthy man? The greatest book I would say, if you want to start thinking differently.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
Huh?
I thought you were going to say Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
No, that's one of them. He wrote it with The Millionaire Next Door.
Yeah.
That is a great book. And this is the guy you see that has his house paid for. He's got a car that might be 3 or 4 years old. And this was but you don't think he's got money, but you'd be surprised. He paid things off, but he's saving, but he's thinking differently. He's educating himself. We're in a different economy. So, I mean, you can look both. Like we said, I think you should enjoy life, but don't buy everything.
Cautious.
Yeah, because we're a bear. What keeps this economy going is our consumption. So buy what you can afford within reason, but also have a plan. I know it's a bad word, but budget is not a bad thing,
Yeah.
But what I would say is that what's the difference between a rich man and a wealthy man? A rich man might have a lot of things, big house, 5 new cars, but he also has notes. A wealthy man might have a smaller house, but let me just say this. He has a lot of assets, and they think differently, They're not, their emotions are different and I'll say this, I think there's spenders and savers. I really do. But you can become a spender into a saver mindset, either through, coming through some financial hardship, but more importantly, educating yourself, understanding and educating yourself. That's how you become wealthy. And then we've got so much information, more than I ever had when I started in this financial industry. I've got people that have come to me for advice because we just help them make their business more efficient. They've done better than most people that have went to a wealth advisor, So wealth management, like I said, we're helping people that have saved and accumulate, make their wealth more efficient, saving more taxes from a holistic approach, how to choose their Social Security and their benefits, how to spend it wisely in this lifetime and next. Because the The one thing that I really find people that the biggest mistake in financial planning is the surviving spouse if you're married, the widow. The widow, because when you go to marriage to filing jointly, people don't realize they lose the lower part of the Social Security, but more importantly, their taxes go up 50%. You lose your only deduction. You don't have many deductions when you're retired, but there was the marriage deduction, which is 26,000 plus. That goes in half. But more importantly, you go from married filing jointly, it's a huge deal. You know, I'm not saying to get married if you want to. The tax code's really nice if you are married. There's a lot of loophole.
I mean, you would in Lake Charles and Lafayette. How important is it, like community is for you, like for your business?
Oh yeah, community's big. I mean, my family's business was family, faith, and community, and I really use that in our own business. You know, my employees are my family, and our faith drives. You know, and our community's built on that. You know, and I mean, giving back is key. I enjoy it. I mean, I wish I could do more. You know, because we actually are going towards the Houston market because we think we can help more and multiply ourselves. Because I have a lot of people like Emily, Tommy Bilbo, people like that have joined my team. My son Lane. You know, and not only that, we have a model, we have a plan, mastermind groups. So we apply the same concept that we help our clients with. You see, and I'm always learning. I'm never the master. I'm always the student. We're learning all the time how to become better at what we do. Just like that's what's a blessing about what you're doing with the podcast, giving back to the community, but also you learn, right?
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes,
From all
sure.
these different people. But also you're, like, for example, I've seen right now there's big elections going on. You're educating the community on, you know, what they stand for and what they mean. So the same thing we're doing.
As you were saying, though, as you said, you represent all people from all kind of ages, from young to 40s and then closer to retirement. So I'm sure, which one is easier to deal with?
Well,
That's a good question.
That's a great question. I've never been asked that question. That's a great question. I only deal with people 45 and older that have saved.
Okay.
I'm just saying, I can't be everything to everyone. And you want to have people, but I do help a lot of my family's children and give them advice. They're probably the easiest. They really are. They really are. I have to say, because not only that, like, and even the preservation phase are easier because you have the time there to position yourself from a tax perspective, investment perspective, even on how you're buying your house in all aspects to build your wealth much greater than your parents and learn from them. And that's really great, you know? And more importantly, how they're educating their children and stuff, you know? I mean, that's where, you know, I've tried to instill in my kids. Probably I didn't because, like I said, even myself, starting in 1998, 2007, I realized I wasn't heading in the right direction, you know? It took me a while to, you know, go through the system and understand. And like I said, I'm not knocking the financial industry or the guys that are out there. They do a lot of great work. I'm just saying from my perspective, you know, I didn't feel like I was helping people. And I can't be everyone. But that's why I love doing these podcast educational events. But yeah, the younger, I would say, if they're open to listening. And that's a problem sometimes. But yes, and it's a hard time to trust people, you know, with your money and take advice. There's so much advice out there. And the big thing is they all want to get rich quick. And it's true. But really, you have what I call later money, soon money, and now money. Now, if you hit it rich or get a great Bitcoin or things like that, or, you know, that's great. But you need to set some of that for long term, you know? You know, I've just seen a lot of people make it rich and lose it. But we had a big conversation about that.
I had my landlord, like,
you know what's interesting? There's this podcast I was watching. There's this guy, I believe he was a comedian, and he was saying that he makes a lot of money. And he said, but at the same time, he have a love for cars, and then not just any cars, kind of like antiques and stuff that's like $150,000 and $300,000. And he said, like, out of his team, the guy he hates the most, the financial advisor, because that guy never got good news to give him. He said, when my phone ringing, it's this guy, I know that's kind of like, it giving that advice like when your mom, it's like when your mom yell at you, like, oh God, I did something wrong.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing.
And I will say, when I was in the financial industry, just in the, you know, the brokerage firm and the bank side, it's a very reactive industry. And I'm not saying we're perfect, but when you have a proactive approach and you educate and understand where you're at, but you have a plan, it's a much different mindset. And you actually feel better, you know? Like our clients, we have like, for our ideal client, we meet with them to, like I said, you were talking about like the preservation phase are like y'all, we have 1 or 2 meetings, but the clients that are retired, we meet with them 3 times a year, investment meeting, tax meeting. But you know what the third meeting is? Hey, where are we going next year? Vacation with your family. What are you going to be doing? You know, what is your bucket list? It's not just about the bucket plan, but your bucket list. I'm not saying within reason. Like if you say, hey, I want to buy a 34-foot yacht, I'll say no. You know, because like I said, I would tell you what you need to hear. But to take a trip to Alaska, the other thing is, like, a lot of, this is really big, I would say. A lot of people, and retirement looks different, volunteering, open a new business stuff, but let's just take the average person. And I learned this from my grandpa. They lived because people are living a lot longer. But you better have a plan to enjoy those glory years, either be 62, 65 when you retire to about 85, and have a plan to enjoy the money. Because you spend more money and you're doing it the right way and having the right plan those years. Because as you age, you know, I always say this, you're going to be sitting at the home for a little longer. You're going to crank up the heater, and you're going to, even during August in Louisiana, be watching CNN, Fox News, and be mad at the world. And you can spend 20 years doing. I'm not saying that's not proper, but we are living longer, right?
Yeah.
But if you're worried about the volatility of the market and don't have a plan to really do the things you want to do, that's not a good plan. You're not. I see it all the time, and that's what we try to prepare you for. And that's why I said it's not. The investments are really important, and 401k and IRAs. But I'm telling you, when you take a holistic approach, it's a game changer.
But like, sounds like, for instance, like somebody like me, like come from Haiti, and I remember, like, you know, I was struggling, but my landlord always like, man, you know, you put the work in already, so your time is coming. In my head, I'm like, you know, shit, I need it now. It's my money, you know, and I need it now. But in the same, like, he was like, man, when you get there, save your money, save your money, save your money. But, and I was like in my mind, okay, cool, it's a good advice. But then imagine you had like you've been waiting like to see like, I mean, I would like to have a nice shoes. I would like to have a nice clothes. I would like to have a nice, you know, cars and stuff like that. And then when you got the money, it's hard to put that aside, all this like things that was building inside, than to just not buying it just to save the money. But then let's say you waited long term to do it. It might not never really live your dream. Is that what I'm saying? Like, it's kind of like, to me, it's like a double-edged sword in the sense. Like,
it is, and you have to have balance in life, you know, because you don't know when God takes us the next day. And every morning I wake up, I thank God I woke up. Yeah. You know, I'm just saying, I'm blessed for that. But the good thing about it is like this jacket, I bought it on sale basis. It was $99. I mean, how could people know the difference? You can still have the nicer things. Do your research, just like I'm saying. Anything I approach, I educate. But online is great. You know, I'm just saying. I mean, I want you to buy local, especially the Stine lumber. I'm just joking. But what I'm saying, do your research. Even when you go buy a car, you know what I'm saying? Like this guy, he buys car. Sometimes that could be a good investment, you know?
But funny story about the car, and I remember, because that's basically my dream car, a car that I've always wanted or whatever. But I've always been like, it's too expensive, I don't need it. Before that, I was driving a 1999 Ford Ranger. So and I was comfortable with it. And I came into the car, and then I spoke with I went to Benoit right there on McNeese, and I saw the car, and I looked at it, it gave me the number, and I went on Blue Book Value and see what the car usually go by, and I realized, okay, that's $30,000 less than it's really worth. And I remember I did all the math in my head, and then when I finally called him, I'm like, man, I'm about to do something dumb. You're the last stop to say no. And he's like, you've been talking about this car for so long, get it.
Well, my rule of thumb is if you're buying a big purchase, sleep on it before you pull the trigger. Don't do it right there on the spot. Always sleep on it. My daddy always gave me that. There's a lot of old rules to the people that have, you know, I grew up with and stuff, but always sleep on it. But always measure twice, cut once. Compare it, you know, and do your research. But like you were coming back to say, one thing I'll say about both of you, y'all appreciate America and what we have more than we do.
Absolutely.
Even myself, because y'all came from, you know, it's in the news. It's a pretty bad environment. But y'all see, look at y'all. I mean, both have great jobs. Both are very highly educated. But y'all appreciate what you have. You see it differently than we do. And I get it. Because let's take it from, I'm not saying it, but, you know, compared to the average American, even the American that probably has less, it's a lot less than y'all have, right? I'm just saying, so you appreciate what you have. So you look at like, you know, and also you want to enjoy it. So there's a balance in life. But that's why a plan of anything is good, right?
Yeah, you always have to have a plan.
It's not, I think the problem is we all want to have social media and all that. We want to have it now. But sometimes now is not the right timing, right?
Yeah, you're right.
Yes. I mean,
You
sometimes-
drove the Ford Ranger.
Yeah.
But then you bought the car you have that you like, and I think is very beautiful. I get to drive it after this. But you looked at the Blue Book value by McNeese, and it was $30,000 less. You bought it smart. And I
Yes.
think if you take the same approach when you're investing, take the same approach with everything you do, and also sleep on it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember like I almost did like because one day we went to New York on vacation.
Time out. Use your restroom real quick. So we can call that
Yeah,
off.
yeah. Make sure you take that thing off your thing, bro.
Hear the water Niagara Falls going.
So like yeah, I went to New York. We went to New York on vacation, and I had a Maserati. So I went to Maserati. So I was in love with it. I said, and I remember like so at the time in the stock market, I was making a lot of money. I said I want to buy the car, and I found one. It was $65,000, and I wanted to pay cash for it. And I said, man, that's a lot of money. Let me go sleep on it. If tomorrow morning I wake up and I feel like I want to buy it,
Exactly.
I'm gonna buy it. I woke up the next day, I didn't care about it.
Yeah.
So I ended up buying a Jaguar, like
Yeah.
way more less money than that.
And like I said, I think like you've got to enjoy life now too, within your means.
Yeah.
We as Americans, we have a lot of excess. What keeps our country going is our spending, our accumulating. You know, I have more stuff that I need, but I'm just saying. Let's say, but especially with big purchase, sleep on it, do your research.
But I mean, when you're looking at because America is the biggest like consumer of like on everything. Every country want to sell the things here because it's just like how many shoes, clothes. Like people like you got social media. Everybody's like
Yeah, and
showing you like what they have, and then you only like that's why people want money now because you see those guys on TikTok. You feel like they selling you something. Truly, sometimes they don't even have this.
they're
kind of
renting
life.
it.
They're renting it, and then you just like, man, I want it, and you make big sacrifice
Yeah.
to get it. And sometimes it's not that bad.
And I agree. I mean, but if you do the right things, build the right foundation, like you as an operator, you do really well. You're very blessed because you got the education, you got the good job. And so you appreciate it too, because where you came from. But like you said, you still enjoying life. You're still doing other things,
Yeah, I mean,
you're giving back just like what you're doing here.
Yeah, it was a like because I feel like you're always good. Get out your system. If you want to spend the money, if you want it, get it, and then
I
just
don't tell my clients how to spend their money. I advise them, and that's the kind of advisor you want. I'll educate you and advise you. Now I can tell you, from the numbers perspective, this is what I would say within the laws and what the rest thing to do, or how your investments are, where you should put your money, or it's your money at the end of the day. You should,
absolutely. But in a sense, though, I always get this little guilt with it because I'm cheap as hell. I don't care about
that's a
most
good thing,
stuff.
actually.
Like I don't care about most stuff really. I really don't. But then when I find out one thing I really care about,
Yeah.
it's kind of hard for somebody to tell me not to get it. It's really, really, really kind of
No,
hard.
I agree. Within your means, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's, like I said, the great thing with the internet and all that. I mean, we could do a lot of research and find it might take a little more time, but you can find it at a reasonable price. I mean, that's the great thing about America. I mean, we are the blueprint for capitalism and democracy across the world, and that's why everybody's looking at what we're doing and, what our leaders are doing and stuff,
And also another question I actually have for you, because you said that you grew up within your family business, right? And then around 2007, 8-ish or so, that's when you kind of, I guess, may say shift gear to where you started within doing a financial advisor job in a different manner.
Yeah.
But once you accumulate all that knowledge, do you bring all that knowledge back to the family business as I've learned this and that?
That's a great question. Great question. So the success for my family was, and my daddy probably wouldn't remember this, but I remember I was 13 or 14, and I started working in the yard, loading lumber. It was not fun. And so after the first week, I got fired.
You got fired from your
You know
own
why?
family.
Yeah, because I used the name Stine. Because we were taught that we're just the regular person, the same person as the employee. Like I never worked really directly with my dad. We had worked for a lot of great people, Constance Beller being one of them, was the store manager of Lake Charles. But what I'd say is that you had a humility.
Yeah.
You had to, make yourself, I understand really quickly, I'm the same as this person. And that's what my uncles did. They treated each other as employees. And so that's how it was so successful. And so, and that's the way how we created success. I'm not saying I know there but it's also hard too to work for somebody else when looking, it's your family name. But we also had the fact that we had to. I mean, it was a responsibility, you know what I'm saying, to give back to the community. I mean, we put family, faith, and community, and that's why I think drove success. But we haven't always been successful. We had a lot of failures and success along the way, equally.
Yeah.
But it's how you learn from those failures to be some successful. Like I was telling my son, Babe Ruth, he struck out more times than he hit.
Yeah,
and that's the power of like being successful. You're going to make mistakes, but it's the definition of insanity.
Do the same thing over and over and exchange.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of people do, right?
Yeah.
We keep buying the big things and putting ourselves in debt and keep doing it. And I'm not saying but that's why I say I'm always the student, never the master. I want to learn from my mistakes, but more importantly, I don't want to make as many mistakes and educate myself and sleep on it.
And also, as a financial advisor, as you said, you get people from all kind of background and ages that come to you. But let's just say, I'm sure you've had a customer or a guest or somebody from the community that approach you and who got all those lavish things, cars, shoes, multiple things, and then whenever they start across from you, and how do you approach the conversation when you guys tell them, that truck you love very much, gotta go. Those 3 extra houses, gotta go. Like, how do you approach that conversation?
First of all, I'm not big on telling people what to do, but I'd rather educate them on what they're doing. And if they don't realize, it can't really help them. I mean, they're not going to become a client, you know what I'm saying? But I really don't work with clients. I usually work with people that have saved and are proactive and want to, people get there for a reason. But I don't, we're specialized in a certain area. But it's hard to change people's mindset. You can't, that's the thing, They've got to want to change. And that's a big thing to accept. Because when you're in a salesman, you're trying to sell them things, right? And buyer's remorse is the worst thing, especially when you're buying investments. It can work out good and bad. And that's why a lot of people get upset with their financial advisor. Because if they don't have a planning approach or a holistic approach or more of a sales approach, they don't really understand why they're buying or what they're doing. That's why our industry probably is not the most credited industry, you know what I'm saying, from a trustworthy perspective. And I understand that.
And like, where you feel like, since you've been being in this business, what do you feel like the biggest mistake people make dealing with money?
I think they are impulsive and they don't think about what they do. They don't have a plan. But like I said, I think a lot of the people they're trusting, even advisors, maybe not be the right person for them either. I think, like I said, a lot of people come to me as clients approach me, like I said, and they've done a better job than most advisors just because they're proactive, they're educating themselves. I think that's, education is credible, but I just think the industry itself is it's a pretty sales industry. You got to be careful. I mean, it's hard. I mean, you're dealing with people's money. It's not health, but when your finances are right, it affects your personal and your health life. So you all got to be balanced. But people need to have a goal and a plan, and they need to work with somebody. It's like this, Tiger Woods. Let's just say, you can argue with this, but he's the greatest golfer in the world.
Yes.
Well, he has a coach. Does that coach Tiger Woods? No. But that coach is holding him accountable and helping him along the way, but also looking at new ideas and how to tweak things, especially as he ages. And then he adds other coaches. He has another team. He has a workout fitness coach. So he has a team, right? Yes. And they're all communicating. Yes. See what I'm saying? So the one thing that I would say, even as individuals like yourself, do y'all have people that you can go to, older, maybe wiser, that you trust?
Yeah, we do.
And then you take their advice and you think about it to what you're trying to solve, right?
Yes.
But you took a team approach, maybe be 2 or 3, but that's the problem. I'm not saying, like Warren Buffett. I mean, he's great at investing. I mean, there's some people out there but he's not giving tax advice. He's giving investment advice. Yes. They go hand in hand.
But because one thing you kind of said multiple times throughout this interview is a lot of people, rich people, whomever they may be, or smart people even, they got this two ways, kind of like an onion. They got many layers around them. They got the system that's well within connected to help to basically manage how they live their life. But would you say, like as you said, the average person, a blue collar worker, maybe it could be a carpenter or whomever, need to have that same kind of system around them in a sense?
I mean, a lot of people, there's misconceptions, you just need a simple plan. You can complicate it. And as you, go through the phases like the accumulation, the preservation, But like I said, even in the accumulation, when you're in the 401k and IRAs, there's things out there from a tax perspective, like using the Roth 401k option. To gradually go into that, to understand what you're doing and where you're headed. And then, like I said, you might not have the same advisor as you go through the different phases of life, or you might not need them. But I think a lot of people overcomplicate things. If it's too complicated, even from an investment perspective, you might want to walk away. And also be diversified. Don't just be in one thing, be in multiple things, and take a look at it from a tax perspective, a holistic approach. How's this going to fit in my overall goals in my life?
But when somebody's listening to like financial advisor, what is like financial advisor provide for somebody to be like, man, I need to get one?
That's a great question. I mean, you need to get somebody that's you first can work with, and that that you're going to listen to and trust. That's a big deal. So you need to ask certain questions. I mean, there's a lot of like ChatGPT and things like that. If they're fiduciary, what they're doing, what their actual fees are. That's another thing. Sometimes those fees can be hidden. I know that.
Yeah.
That's when I was a sales advisor. I didn't really disclose the fees, not just because I did. That was the game. Of
that's how they operate. It's kind of
but I mean, there's a fee to everything. There's no free advice. Just because you think your checking account's free, it's not free. There's a whole system behind that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, banks make a lot of money, So just educate yourself on who you need, or if you need anybody. But like I said, you want to educate yourself of who you're working with, And like I said, I always tell anybody I meet, you didn't meet the girl you met, did you? Well, some people have, but I'm just saying, you want to interview 2 or 3 different people too, to make sure they are the right fit. But more in your stage of life where you're at. You see what I'm saying? I mean, we're not for everybody. I'm not.
Okay, I guess one last question for me in that sense. Have you ever had to fire yourself from a client?
Oh, all the time, yeah. I mean.
Can you tell us a story? Like
one story. Of course, you can't say no name.
No. But. I mean, in 2000, so like I said, doctors are great. Yeah. They're very smart, but they're very also high efficient. And so he just wouldn't listen to her advice, and I kept telling him, and I wasn't right about anything. And I would always be the first to admit when I'm wrong. Always. And that's just my humility of my life, that I always wasn't there. That's why I said I learned from my mistakes, where I came from, and to be a better advisor, to be a better husband, to be a better father, and to be better in the community. Because giving is really the best thing you can purchase, is like y'all are doing, give back to the community. But he just wouldn't take my advice for nothing, and I was always one to blame. And it come to find out, he had 5 different advisors within the past 2 years. I should have did more due diligence, And I'm just saying, so you can't help people that don't want to help or don't trust advice, That's why I don't try to sell. I just show them what we can do and our plan, and I think it's a great system, but it's not for everybody, So let's get back to the now. We were talking about, and I don't, but what's going on in the economy today? So the economy is going to go through cycles. I will say this, our founding fathers, going back to the original Constitution, that was a smart plan. And I'll say it's a plan to weather a lot of different presidents, leaders in this country. And it's proven, and there's a lot of divide right now.
Yes.
More than I've seen, And like I tell people, some of our congressmen are really rich. They're making $200,000 a year, and they're there for 30 years, and they're worth $150 million.
Yeah. How does that work? Do that math.
Do the math. Yeah. And so you have to have a plan for yourself. Like I said, educate yourself on what's to come, forecast. And like I said, I look at I think what I do is I look at all aspects of all types of political thinking, and I take a very open approach to it, because I have to. I have different clients that think different ways in different political environments or faiths and stuff. But I put it to my own faith. But I want to understand the person. When I meet somebody new, I want to learn where they came from. And when you have that approach, that's the best way to approach people, right?
Yes.
And so that's hard for me because I like to talk. But what I would say is that right now, the tariffs, let's talk about that. Yeah. We've had tariffs used in the past. 1960, it's a global cube. The current leader, our president, he's using tariffs to offset, to have lower taxes. because but they haven't been doing that all along, because they've been we're bringing in $4 trillion in tax revenue as a country from us, our citizens, to pay these people but they're spending $6 trillion.
Yeah.
And they're our financial advisors. They're making our decisions. So you better have a plan to pay less taxes and to enjoy your money, because we are in the rich country. It's not perfect by any means. And right now, a lot of people are like, numb to the news and listening to it from the political environment. But I don't know how we're going to come out of this.
But this is the scare tactic that's kind of really because people don't understand tariff, but when you got the news feeding you misinformations and you scare people, because think about somebody, if you retired in 15 years, why are you even worried about your 401k right now? But you just, oh my God, my phone can do it.
I need to hire you, Vadim. You're a great financial advisor.
And the thing is, we talked about all that kind of stuff all the time. And then, like you were saying, people need to educate themselves. But if you do not educate yourself, you're kind of
from both sides.
Yeah, from both sides, you got to understand, because like you were saying with the 401k thing, if you know the stock market, it doesn't matter if it goes all the way down. As you said, it's at a discount. Yeah. That's one way to look at it. But most people, when they look at the 401k, they say, oh, God. Well, even though they're 30 years away from retirement, they're going to be like, oh, my God, my money disappeared.
That's why I said my degree should have been psychology. Because I like to learn the person and understand, but our brains are wired for fear.
Yes.
And run,
Yeah.
And that's what our first thing is so the cortex, we get into that negative, oh my God, I lost money. Back up. What's the plan? Call me. If I'm your vibe, just a second. But and that's sometimes hard to say, don't worry about it. Why are we doing this? But that's if you educate yourself, a plan. But it's harder when especially in retirement years, to go through these pains. But that's why I said people don't realize what they're having. If you're taking money out of your 401k or your IRA that's invested in long-term stocks and mutual funds, and that's your monthly check, that's not a good thing right now.
Yeah, and
that's why
right now.
That bucket plan approach works. And I would tell everybody that you should go read that bucket plan book. It really would change.
You think like somebody get the 401k, and you've seen that, oh man, let me take all my money from the company stock, and you just leave it like that. You make the biggest mistake
of your life.
For example, I had a guy come in and he because we're all taught to pay our house off. And this is a misnomer. It's our biggest investment. Let me tell you, if you got $500 or $1 million in your 401k, that's your biggest investment, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because it's growing by the day.
And also it could cost you the most with your taxation now that we've talked about it. But so this guy he wanted to pay his house. He had $100,000 to pay it off. But it cost him, when he took it out of his IRA, $135,000. Well, he had a 3.3% mortgage rate, and I did the math. I was,
oh God,
I don't want to tell this guy what he did wrong, because he already did it. But you see the mistakes were told, because he said that's what I was told, and that's why I said some things that we think we know. If we're about to make a decision right now, when would you want to know the right information? Right now.
Yeah, right now, exactly.
Exactly.
I don't want to know about it tomorrow before I make a decision.
That's why I said education, sleep. There's a process to doing things.
But in a sense, see how you're saying, like, a lot of time you got to be able to, I guess, predict, have a plan in a sense. Because the whole thing with tariff is, the only thing people know is when they go to the supermarket, they spend more than they used to spend.
Yeah.
And then that pisses in themselves enough to where it's kind of like, even though let's just say they might know, hey, if the tariff stays like that for 2 years, you might not have to pay no taxes for 5-10 years. They're not thinking about that. They just know, when I go to the supermarket, I spend a little more, and I don't like that.
And I agree with what you're saying, because this previous administration, like he was in 2017, when he was in office, inflation was 2%, and tariffs wasn't the biggest effect.
Yes.
Well, now that we've had COVID and we shut down the world, we created our own man-made inflation, and they've raised interest rates. Well, it's a different story. But also, he doesn't feel like we should raise tax. So taxes are a tariff, but it's just a different types of tax. It's a tax on, like I said, I do think there's a horrible trade balance. We've been giving away the house a long time, and that people have been taken advantage of. You might disagree or agree. Just for example, and I'm not saying this to be political, but why are we giving $400 million to Ukraine, and European Union is only giving $100 million? We've been financing a lot of things. That's why we have a $38 trillion deficit. So there is we need to create some balance. And I'm not saying he's the right person for it, but whatever. but at least they're doing something. But that's why he's trying to enact the tariffs. And I think we just have to be patient and to see how it plays out. Because as you can see, he says one thing and then 90 days, he puts a 90-day pause. So I think and like I said, I've educated, if you read the books, you pretty can see he likes to throw a big stick out there and then pull back. But I mean, I think I don't know what he's doing. But like I said, we are due for a correction in the market, in my opinion. It could be another 10 years. I don't know. But you got to have a plan. And this is, if you're younger or you have money on the side, it's not a bad opportunity to buy.
I mean, to me, like from somebody from the outside looking in, like, not from this country. Okay, a lot of people, if it's Trump doing, everybody agree we should be like, even though when you look at 1989, Nancy Pelosi was saying, hey, we need to tariff China. Tariff has always been, they've been talking about this for years. But now, finally, somebody accepts to do it. Yeah. And then you got somebody coming like misconception, coming like lies. Even though what he's doing, okay, think about, you have a system that was working, the system wasn't working. Somebody come bold enough to make a move. Let's see what he does.
Which goes back to what you're saying, though. Which you're right. Let's see what it does. Things might get better.
It's only been 5 weeks.
But right now, the thing people see is eggs are expensive.
You don't see that because you know what? You see like, it's not that, because when you look at on the news and you look at your social media and you got those groups that's pushing a narrative that's not true.
But think that narrative, people are going to believe it. People that's not really educated on the matter, which is what we were talking about. The 401k going down, but people don't understand how the stock market works. People seeing their grocery bill going up, that's going to piss them off. They're not going to think about, okay, this man is trying a tactic that might make some money in the long run.
Like April 5th, there is no way you already see it in your grocery store.
Yes, you do. Egg been up there
just
for
like
a minute.
I don't know. I mean, I think because the market reaction, just like it today, they took off the tariff with China because they found 90% of smartphones are made from China. So he took that off. So he's doing things to where it's not going to hurt, but he's trying. I don't know. We just got to let it play out.
Yes,
exactly.
But here's what you would say it about the news. Listen to the news. When I was growing up, we had Walter Cronkite guy. Well, I wasn't that old. But anyway, what I'm saying is 1 hour news and the morning news. Now we have 24-hour news. Do you think it's all going to be true?
No, absolutely not. It's just creating panic.
If you turn the news on, like especially during the election cycle, for a month, it's the same news when you turn it back on the next month. You see?
Yeah.
And sometimes you got to turn off the noise.
Yeah.
And maybe, like I said, I understand, look at your statement, but maybe you don't look at it if you're 40 years old. Now, if you're retired, you might want to read the playbook. But anyway, because like it was so amazing, like last year, past years, everybody's been doing so well. They would come see me, say, well, I don't want to change. The market's doing well. I'm like, you plan when things are well.
Yeah.
Because you're planning to protect when things are bad. Yeah. You hope for the best, plan, you want to protect what you have and continue growing.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? But it's everybody. But here's what I also say. People don't want to deal. They don't want to deal with it. They kind of push it to the side. I'm guilty of it. Oh, I don't want to deal with that right now, We don't want to face sometimes what's to come.
Till it show up.
Exactly. But we want to rant and rave about what's been going on for the past 6 weeks, but our country's been doing this. They've been $38 trillion didn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
So, and they even said, we're going to feel a little pain along the way. I'd rather them address it now than address it later when it's too late.
Yeah, but I think this is my,
I'm not saying they're doing
good. I think like everybody can be on the same page, but when you got other people's in they got ill intention just to like break bad narrative and then mess up the whole thing. Yeah. You can like, we go say, man, we're going to do let's say we're doing the podcast. And then you just like, we have family members like, oh no, this is not gonna work. And when you got those noise, at the end of the day, you just like, man, all right, let's give up.
Everybody has an opinion.
Everybody has an opinion.
That's why you have to have trusted people you can go to that know are gonna be honest with you and positive with you. And that understand your gifts and your talents.
Absolutely, I agree 100%.
Because we have so much negative out there. That's what the news is, negative.
Yes,
it is.
And that's why people, I think, should turn into positive things like this.
But let me ask you a simple question. I know I said this, the last one was my life, but this one for sure going to be my last.
Major one.
What's your definition? Let's just say if you had to define money, what would your definition be of money?
That's a great question. I ask all the people who come to me, what does money mean to you? Money is a tool to get where we need to be and what we need to first to survive, to provide for my family. To provide for my family, that is the first thing that people should be looking at. But sometimes we don't. And secondly, it's to accumulate, to do the things later in life. But you've got to appreciate it. We're very gifted, but we don't appreciate it, but everybody's definition, and it's a question I ask everybody that comes see me. What does money mean to you? For me, I'm very blessed. It gives me the things I need to do and want to do. Now, the beautiful thing, as I've gotten older and wiser, it also allows me to give back, building that proper foundation to have a secure financial. I don't care. I'm not going to be a billionaire, guys. I mean, come on. I mean, everybody wishes I'm just saying I'm not. I mean, I do well, Do I do better than some of my clients? No. But I mean, I am a good coach. I am a good planner. I know the rules, but more importantly, I have the right people around me, my team, to help the people. And we only help the people we can work with. But what I'm saying is, and that's where I'm especially, like, I like to see my employees successful more than me. I like to see my clients enjoying. That's what I've built a foundation for. And from my experiences of good and bad, to help others with their money, to make what the money means to them to be important for them. Sure, short term, it might be to buy that car you have outside.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But what's that goal?
Yeah.
So you have, like I said, just like now, you have now money, you need to have that savings. Soon money. Okay, you want to buy a car next 5 years, 2 to 3 to 5 years?
Yeah.
How do we get there? And then later money for retirement. You see,
Yeah.
that's the bucket plan approach. And if you look at things like that from a time, it makes it much easier. But is money my God? No, it's not. And I think that's where a lot of people get crossways with it. And it really could hurt them, because they look at it that's the only way I can be in the popularity of social. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So I can show a life that I'm not currently living.
Money could be a bad thing, but it also could be a great thing used properly.
But what's your opinion of money, in a sense? Yours?
I think money is a tool to get to what you want to do and accomplish the goals you want.
I agree.
That's a good
I agree. I agree.
But right now, I feel like with all the knowledge you accumulated, and if there is somebody watching this podcast and just want to get the financial in order, what would you tell them?
Educate yourself to where you're at, where your goal is. Think about hard. It's not hard to journal. I journal, write it down, and what is my plans? Now, soon, later. And then how do I get there? A business plan, all kind of different plans. But, it doesn't have to be detailed. It doesn't have to be, but educate yourself and kind of see where am I headed? Where do I want to be now, sooner or later? It can be, hey, a bucket list of what you want to accomplish, but start that hard foundation, especially when you're younger, if you can. But younger people, it's different, If you can save, get into a 401k, good job, maybe take a tax approach to it, educate yourself on what you have and just put it there. You forget about it, Don't worry about the day-to-day noise. You get closer, our age, I'm older than y'all, but still enjoy life. Don't because a lot of people don't. A lot of people you hear, he worked all his life. He retired when he was 70 because he really didn't know what he had, all the money saved. But he got out, he just went home and didn't enjoy his life. So enjoy your life along the way within your means, but still save and have that long-term later plan and have a soon plan to, buy the car, within your means and educate.
Buy a new house or something like that.
Yeah, a house within, but don't get in debt if you don't have to. Credit card can be really bad debt. Pay that off as soon as you can, Paying your house off, that depends on the individual. If an individual can't take the long-term approach and position themselves, maybe pay it up. But don't just pay your house off. Put your more money aside, like for retirement. You want to do both. And also put it where it's tax-free if you can. And then when you get closer to that later retirement, have a plan to enjoy it and get with an advisor or educate yourself. Use the bucket plan approach. It's a great book by Jason Smith to how you're going to get that money out. And here's what we do. So we know you want to have that vision of anything you want. Let's take retirement. This is what my retirement looks like, what that means. I want to take one trip a year. I want to have this, but this is how much I'm spending now. We spend what we make. And then how much am I going to get from if you have rental property, Social Security, because Social Security is just really important. This is if you're in retirement. And then what is my gap per month? And that's That's what you're going to take off your investments, And like I said, you can have $500,000 or $1 million. Like some people have bigger pensions, some people have rental property. It's not about what you have; it's about where you want to go and how much you need to do the things you want to do.
Absolutely.
So I like to ask this question.
But also, here's the other thing: do not compare yourself to other people. That'll get you into debt, into places where you don't want to be.
Comparison is a thief of joy.
Be thankful for who you are, and what are my gifts and what do I really want to accomplish? Seeing that other person on the other side of the social media and things or drive this and that, that's that person's lifestyle. You don't really know where he's at. He could be hurting inside. He could be paying $1,000 or $2,000 a month. A lot of people go buy a new car, then they've got $10,000 in debt before they buy the other car. That's not a good thing. I'm just saying, think before you act, but also I think a lot of people, they're trying to compare themselves to everybody else and try to be that person. Just be thankful for who you are. Now you can try to become that person, but you can't. You are you. You have your own gifts and talents. And that's the other thing I would tell you. Don't get a job just to get a job for the money. Also, if you can get a job that you love, huge.
Huge.
You could be more successful than you ever imagined.
Let's just say somebody want to get in touch with you or stop by the office and hire you as a financial advisor. How they can get in touch with you?
We're on the corner of Ryan Street and Broad Street. It's the bank. It's 800 Ryan Street, Suite 200. You can call our number 337-474-3434. I think Jason has given us like 20 books. So if people want to call, like the first 20 people, like they'll call the office tomorrow whenever this airs. Yeah. We'll give them those books out. All right. And I might take a couple of calls because we do what they call a fit call.
I like to ask this question: when all is said and done, what you want your legacy to be?
Huh?
When all is said and done, what you want your legacy to be?
Giving back and making a difference in people's lives, and my boys becoming good men. But I mean, at the end of the day, we can't take the money with us. It's about what did we give back on this earth to make it a better place? I would start with our community. I don't think I'm ever going to be this big Fox News or CNN. I'd like to help my own community. That's why I created this, because I've heard nothing but great things about y'all and what y'all done for the community. Helping people give it a good word.
Thank you.
And I'm not saying that just, I thank y'all for being here. I'm serious. I mean, Tommy Bilbo, one of my best friends, by the way, vote for him for city councilman. But he's just a good friend of mine. I know that man. He's a great man. He's doing it because he loves it. And he's, like I said, he's actually came to work for me. He left the plants at the age of 50 because he built that right foundation. He's seen me come through. Actually, he's my first financial client, good friend. And I've surrounded myself with people that I care about, and want to make a difference. Okay. Especially and I mean, I can get way into this, but like the whole immigration thing right now, I think this is the land of opportunity. We all want to get rid of these. I don't think most people coming to this country want to hurt this country. They're coming to this for a better life. Now, should they come legally? Yes. But we need to fix our own system.
Yeah.
I agree.
If I'm a father of 4 boys and I don't have a job and they're eating dirt, I'm going to do what I need to get my boys in
the best country in the world to see.
I'm not trying to get political. Yeah. But we've got to come to a balance. You know what I'm saying? And there is a lot of bad here. And I think, but it's got to be, but I'm just glad that y'all have the opportunity to come from, because we talked, previously before this, that Haitian's a pretty bad situation right now.
Yeah,
but at least y'all are able,
and
y'all are a prime, great example of what our country's about.
Absolutely. Sure. And I agree 100%. It's kind of like the land of opportunity. And as you said earlier, is this country perfect? Absolutely not. But it is one of the best countries in the world. And as somebody who came from Haiti, who traveled a little bit, I got to say, yes, this is one of the best countries in the world. There's so much opportunity, so much education, so much thing that's available and resources. Yes, you can see people complaining about tariffs and all those little bitty stuff. That ain't nothing compared when you came to a country where people are dying on a daily basis of starvation, or people can just break into your house
like
and
you
shoot.
Said, they can't go out their house.
Yeah.
A woman can't go out of Haiti out of their house without being worried about being raped or victimized.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or stolen. I mean, we take for granted for what we have.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the one thing I would say that really changed my life was the military. I didn't do so good in my first year in college, so and it's true though. I mean, I went and joined the Army National Guard, paid for my schooling. It was the best thing I ever did. And I'm just saying, but y'all are a great example of, coming into this country and taking advantage of what we have to offer. Now I'm sure there's other people out there that do it, but that's a small percentage.
Yeah, I feel like it's not as big as a percentage as people think it is. Because I know plenty of immigrants. Because I'm from Haiti myself. I know Jamaicans. I know, of course, a boatload of Haitians, a whole bunch of Mexicans, and so on and so forth. And all of them are just people that's just trying to make the best for their family, who's taking advantage of those opportunities. I mean, I'm not saying they don't have no bad one, but I've never met one.
Yeah, and my goal is to hopefully fix the immigration problem where we can allow people that want to come to this to make it a good country. And I think that's what hopefully they're going to do. Yeah. But I mean, it's going to be a process either way. You can't have open borders either. I agree with that too.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to get political.
I understand.
Y'all coming from immigrant country, I'm just saying that y'all are a prime example.
Thank you.
Of bringing.
It means a lot.
Look what you're doing for our community.
Yeah, it means
a lot. It really does.
Man, that was a really thank you so much for coming to the show. I hope the people that's watching have learned, and if you feel like, hey, that's some good advice, and go join Stine Financial Management. They can help you with your 401k.
Yeah, and I got a great team. Like you said, Ebony, Rito, Tommy. I've got other advisors just taught me to have trained with me and through our training program that we have with all these other officers.
You got anything?
No, just the usual. Thank you for stopping by. It was like such an informational conversation. Yeah. I've learned so much through this hour and a half or however long we've been doing this. And as usual, follow, like, share, and subscribe. And if you want to get better handle on your finances, that's the guy to talk to.
I'd love to come back to you. Like I said, I love to talk.
All right, man. Thank you, man.
Thank you so much. That was really good.
That was amazing. That was amazing.